across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia Hartley-Brewer. She's back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Coming up, Reform UK suggesting cutting benefits for non-citizens, saving $230 billion in order to close Britain's fiscal black hole. Meanwhile, Labour is planning a £6 billion tax raid. Now, if you put the two together, this is Reform, of course, saying, well, here's our idea. The Lib Dems have apparently got their own idea, and I'm sure the Tories, if you ask nicely, will proffer their idea. It's a straightforward question. How do we fill this black hole? Where does the money come from? Also this afternoon, Donald Trump claiming that paracetamol in pregnancy may raise autism risks, despite no credible evidence. Health experts globally affirm its safety, warning untreated pain poses greater risks to the pregnant mother. Not the pregnant person, I should add. An Ethiopian asylum seeker, Hadush Kebatu, has been jailed for assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman days after arriving in the UK in a small boat. His conviction sparked nationwide protest outside asylum hotels, and understandably so. That story's not going to go away in a hurry. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. If you ask three economists any question about financial or fiscal matters, you get about 120 different answers. It's pretty difficult to pin this stuff down. There is no one-size-fits-all science behind fixing an economy or growing an economy. That's been the case forever. The left will have one idea, the right will have another idea. Sometimes one works a bit, other times events, dear boy, events take over and the whole thing goes to mash, despite, and Liz Truss will show you the workings out on this, despite all good intentions and a plan which on paper should have worked. We're kind of in that territory now. I don't even think, I get a sense the next 10 years are going to be... I wanted to use the word hellish, but I don't think that even touches the sides of where we're going to be. And I'm looking at two obvious areas that are coming round the corner at about 1,000 miles an hour and about to knock us all for six. One is social care. In fact, there's three obvious ones. One is social care, and I was going to put NHS in that list as well, which is kind of, there's an obvious correlation between the two. Cost of the NHS, cost of social care, and the cost of state pensions. And between those three, as far as I can tell, I'm not an economist, I think we're a bit stuffed. I think we're up the what's it without a thingy. I think that's where we're likely to remain for some time. Boris Johnson on the steps of Downing Street back in 2017 said, you know, finally we will fix social care. Nothing was said about it. I appreciate COVID came along and bit everybody on the heels, but broadly speaking, nothing was done. These are areas that are going to cost us hundreds of billions of pounds. Rachel Reeves has been urged to mount a £6 billion tax raid on pensioners, landlords and the self-employed. This is the Resolution Foundation, as you was hearing with Julia. They have very close ties with senior figures in government. Morgan McSweeney, who's as close to Keir Starmer as it can get, used to, I think I'm right in saying, used to work for the Resolution Foundation. He said the Chancellor, or the Resolution Foundation said the Chancellor should cut national insurance by 2p and add it to income tax. Well, some would argue, well, that's kind of a fairer way of doing it. This intervention a little over 2 months before that pivotal budget comes as the Chancellor considers how to address an estimated, are you ready for this, £20 billion shortfall in public finances. So the idea is that the move would have little effect on the average working person. And of course, Labour has pledged not to raise taxes on the average working person. However, it would raise £6 billion by adding to the tax bills for those who don't pay employee national insurance. So you end up getting those in the sort of self-employed area. That would be landlords, the self-employed, someone like me. And of course, pensions, potentially. The change would affect around 8.7 million pensioners already paying income tax and Britain's 4.3 million self-employed workers. You put all of that together, you are forced to ask the question, where does the money come from? Now, yesterday, Nigel Farage unveiled a package of measures, not strictly 100% doable. He would have known that, and said, look, this is the way that we can make this work. We can save 240 billion by a few very basic measures. And this was just based on things like immigration and foreign nationals and use of services like the welfare system, etc. 0344 499 1000. So that was one suggestion. If you did that and it gave the numbers that Farage is talking about, you would solve the problem. If you listen to I'm trying to think who the kind of Dale Vince is one of the patriotic millionaires, I think they're called, aren't they? And there's another big voice in that world who, what's the name of the old kind of South London economist, Finn? What do they call him? You know, the fella, Gary Economics. You listen to him, he'll tell you, you know, people who've got values, property values, assets over 10 million should pay a certain percentage on that on an annual basis. All of these things. So if you follow the kind of left-wing argument, it fills the black hole. If you follow the right-wing argument, it fills the black hole. All great on paper. And then you sort of start to analyse it a little bit and go, is this really going to work? Well, I'll give you your suggestions. The Treasury black hole, where should the money come from? 0344 499 1000. Always remember, I don't think Thatcher was the first person to say it, but the government doesn't have any money, it only has your money. And that's an irredeemable reality. So keep that in mind. You can use an easel, an abacus or a calculator, anything you like for this. Where should the money come from? Joining us now is one of the UK's top economists. Dave Wooding is back on the programme with us. Sorry, columnist, I should say, with The Sun. Would that have been a career you could have followed? The economy is a whole other area, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I remember when I first became a political journalist 25, 30 years ago, the economy used to terrify me because it was an area which is so detailed. But, you know, you learn your...
Well, it also gets into philosophy and all sorts of things. But years ago, I bought that, you know, that those dummies books, you know, economics for dummies. And I thought, well, this is going to be fine. Got lost on the first page.
Yeah. There's a good one called A Free Lunch, which explains there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
And takes it from there, which is a really good...
That's
the one I started on.
But every time I read something like this, when somebody tried to explain Bitcoin to me, there's a journalist called Dominic Frisby. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Dominic does comedy and he's also, in recent years, moved into sort of the world of finance as well. So he wrote a book on Bitcoin, and I interviewed him when it came out, and he said, I wanted to write a book that my dad can understand. And he gave me a copy of the book, got home, page 3, I was done. I couldn't follow any of it.
But, well, you better stay out of Bitcoin, it's too complex.
It is way too complex. OK, let's look then at this first story, Dave. Reform UK I've got their suggestion for how to save money, and of course Rachel Reeves is going to have to find lots of ways to save or raise money. It's worth having a little reminder, firstly, on Rachel Reeves's fiscal stability, her ideology. Let's have a listen to the Chancellor in action.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And that is why, at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean.
What the budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order, so never again will I have to do a budget like I did in October.
But our
public finances are now on a firm footing.
We have now set the public spending envelope for this Parliament. We don't need to come back and ask for more. We've now set that. We're going to do a zero-based review to make sure we get value for money for every pound that taxpayers' money spent.
In that budget, I've tried to fix the foundations and wipe the slate clean.
But it's so 1.3% year after next, for example. And that implies, doesn't it, that you're going to have to come back and ask for yet more tax rises?
Absolutely not. We have now set the envelope of spending for this Parliament, and we're going to live within our means.
within our means. She might be right. So that's what Rachel Reeves, she, you know, advocating a voice to be trusted, etc. It's worth having a quick listen, Dave, to Nigel Farage's take on where we could save money. Here's what he said yesterday.
We will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. This is grossly unfair on taxpayers. They are being absolutely hammered to pay for people who are not British citizens. And in terms of the national debt, which I touched on earlier, well, we've got major, major problems looming there already. We are not the world's food bank. It is not for us to provide welfare for people coming in from all over the world.
And Dave, I keep hearing, you know, politicians, we always have done, haven't we, to a degree, say, like, if we did this, it would solve all the problems. If we only add 5p onto the top rate of income tax, but only when, you know, for those earning over £500,000, and you would, the take on that is 25 trillion quid or something daft like that. And you think, well, really? Well, surely that sounds fair. It never happens, this stuff. It never quite works like that. But somehow we've got to find the money.
Well, everything you do has a counter effect. It's a bit like, you know, doing lots of exercise. You do a lot of running to keep fit, then you get a knee injury, or you take medicine to cure one problem, and it creates another problem because of the side effects. Yeah. In the same way, when you do something in economics, it has a counter effect. So you tax the wealthy, and they all leave Britain, and they're the wealth creators. You put up the income tax so much that people switch to different ways of doing their accounts, and you lose money.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's always the way. So yeah, what we're seeing, I think, here, Ian, is the different ideologies of the right and the left. I mean, the Conservatives and Nigel Farage are broadly in the area of, it's your money, you spend it how you want, we shouldn't be wasting your money. And the Labour philosophy seems to be, we look after you from the cradle to grave, but give us your money so that we can do that. Yeah. And I think because of that philosophy, Rachel Reeves is looking mainly to taking money off us to fill the black hole, whereas perhaps you should be looking at cuts, but cuts is always a dirty word for the Labour Party. And benefit cuts, I mean, the benefits bill is 65 billion last year, and it's going to welfare, it's going to go up to 100 billion by the end of this Parliament, you know, more money spent on defence.
Yeah, it's almost double what it currently is.
And who's claiming it all? Well, undoubtedly there are people who claim benefits. It's like migration. I mean, there are genuine asylum seekers, there are genuine migrants who've come through visas and the proper protocol of getting into the country. We don't mind them. What we do mind is the people who cheat the system. And in the same way in benefits, we don't mind people claiming benefits when they're on hard times or when they're unable to work.
That's the whole point.
But there are so many now claiming out of work benefits who we start to ask questions of, we're not really that sick, are we?
Yeah. When I look at, you know, I know the reform suggestion yesterday is as much about mood music, isn't it, from reform? You know, this is the kind of thing we care about, the politics of it, rather than the detail. And I think even those that designed this policy around Nigel Farage have said actually there will be some exceptions to it. So it's not going to raise 240 billion quid. It might raise 20 billion quid. It might not even get that, according to some experts, and others say it's 100 billion quid. So you go through all of these kind of, you know, which one do you trust, who do you... The one thing that's for sure, someone somewhere's got to solve this, because it's everything. I mentioned social care before, the NHS, you mentioned welfare, all of those areas. I mean, it's going to be insane. You know, some suggesting we'd have to go back to an 80% tax rate to pay for this stuff. Yeah,
well, I was talking to a Norwegian the other day, and I bumped into him at a football match, and he was telling me that I was saying, you get taxed very heavily over there. He said, yeah, the taxes are eye-watering here, but everything works. The health care is good, the transport system is good, and it's cheap. We pay a lot of tax, but we get really good services. Now, here, we pay a lot of tax and we're getting rotten services.
That's the problem.
Something's got to give.
There's the question. Where does the money come from? Where do you think, where would you suggest we somehow fill this increasingly large and growing black hole? 0344 499 1000. What is the answer? Is it taxation? Is it cutting something? Is it a whole new way of thinking? Now, Donald Trump has sparked major controversy, claiming that mothers taking paracetamol during pregnancy may increase the risk of autism in children. Health experts globally have reaffirmed its safety, warning untreated pain poses a greater risk to mothers and babies. Let's have a listen to what the US president had to say.
First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol during pregnancy, can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that.
Well, it has kind of divided the room. Tylenol, that's the bad guy, which is paracetamol, of course. I was looking at the comments online, Dave, and it's kind of interesting. I think largely people side with who they like politically.
Yes.
So if you like Donald Trump, you believe Donald Trump. If you like RFK Jr., then you believe it. With no evidence. I'm not a doctor. I know nothing about this area. I couldn't possibly say whether it's safe or not safe. But what I do know is that most of the medical world, we're not talking about dodgy people taking brown envelopes from Pfizer or some other medical establishment, those kind of conspiracies. Most of the medical world say that, well, there really isn't a connection here. And also, the discovery of autism predates the invention of paracetamol, I think I'm right in saying.
Yes, I mean, this all comes from a study by Harvard University and New York's Sinai School of Medicine. And if you read, I've only read a truncated version of it, but if you read that, it doesn't reach a conclusion. It says there are suggestions, effectively. It's quite qualified what they're saying. And what baffles me is, why is the President of the United States getting involved in this? It raises all sorts of questions. What is he connected with a pharmaceutical company, for instance? And why does he want to create what looks like possibly a conspiracy theory, or even is going to demonize women who take paracetamol when they're pregnant? I don't understand why he's got involved. There's the bigger things for a president to get involved in than this.
Well, also, what I thought was interesting, I mean, if people want to go conspiratorial on these things, I think a more compelling conspiracy is the fact that the American government are advocating a new drug or another drug that would actually be more effective.
Yes.
And you think, that's interesting.
Yes.
I mean, paracetamol makes about $3 a year for that industry. They cost nothing to produce. You know, you can buy them in a petrol station for about 15p a packet. They cost diddly. They're incredibly effective. The profit is in the bulk rather than the proportion of the cost of making it, etc. I'd imagine whatever this new drug is or this additional drug that's being suggested by Trump, mothers in the States will probably have to, you know, it'll probably cost more than paracetamol. I'm only putting that out there because that sounds more plausible an explanation than the idea that the American president stood up and offered no evidence for this.
Yeah, and you know, if you're pregnant and you need to take something, you'll be stigmatized. Even those who've had children who have got autism will now be thinking, did I take paracetamol? Was that to blame? Which is grossly unfair. I mean, as we were saying earlier, the contraindications. I mean, the problem of not taking paracetamol is probably just as bad as taking it.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
You know, so do people take risks with their child? I mean, we're going back to the MMR jabs years ago. I remember my own children having to have that, and I looked at it and I thought, well, there's a slight risk of damage from taking the jab, but the risks of not having the jab and them getting one of these 3 complaints, or you know, the same with whooping cough.
Yeah.
The damage that could cause is horrific. So you take the lower risk, and I don't understand why the president has got involved in this. It just seems a strange thing for him to intervene on.
Well, pretty much. I mean, there is, you know, there are some, I'm sure, clinicians who go, well, there could be something, but broadly speaking, right across the world, from studies in Sweden, this country, and elsewhere, there is no consensus that what the American president said is true. Obviously, science and everything should always be questioned, and if you discover something new, sure, you know, you release it. But the body of opinion at the moment is so stacked against what Trump had said. And all right, I'll put my hands up. Might turn out they all go, actually, no, it is true. Well, I think more evidence, Americans in particular, want more evidence for that. But in the meantime, if you're pregnant right now in Wyoming, you're probably not going to take a paracetamol.
Absolutely.
Because you just heard the president say it could cause autism.
Of course, there's more other reasons for autism. I mean, it's genetic, we know that. It can be genetic. And also, lots more people are saying their children are autistic now as a sort of...
It's also an umbrella title, isn't it?
It's a bit like mental health. It's expanded.
It's an umbrella title.
Yeah.
There's more diagnosis than ever before. So we will talk some more, Dave, in a moment. Dave Wooding with us, of course, legendary journalist, columnist at The Sun, and Liverpool supporter. I don't know why I felt the need to mention that. That's why he's constantly got a big smile on his face at the moment. 0344 499 1000. More from you. And suggestions, please. Where should the money go? If you want to fill the UK's ballooning black hole, the Treasury, I'm sure, are ready for your suggestions. How do we do it? Lines are open. This is Talk.
We will pass what legislation is necessary to see this through. And I think the majority of the public will be behind us because nobody wants to pay so much taxes for people who've just arrived. And look, it's not about race or nationality. It's about rights and responsibility.
But you know that's what people are going to say. You know that's what the left is going to say.
Of course.
This is bigotry.
They say that for everything. It all comes down to race. They call us far right for wanting to prioritise British people. But, the public owes nothing to someone who arrived 5 years ago and hasn't contributed. I'm sorry, we just don't.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
27 minutes after 1 o'clock, this is Talk. Dave Wooding is with us, journalist, columnist at The Sun, and lots still to talk about. There's a couple more stories we're going to squeeze in here as well. Keir Starmer, of course, announcing yesterday the recognition of Palestine, aiming to revive Middle East peace talks. But it's, for some people, been seen as incredibly insensitive because of the timing just before Jewish New Year. It's been called tone deaf and a betrayal. Let's have a listen to Mr. Starmer on this very issue.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
So there it was. I don't know, other than, we were just talking during the break, Dave, other than appeasing the left and a few sort of daft Corbynites, I'm not sure what this achieves for Keir Starmer, on the sort of the geopolitical reasoning behind it.
No, I mean...
So it keeps Israel safer, really?
Well, his argument is that it will show that peace needs to happen and that will give them a reason to look for peace. But all it's done is agitate the Jewish community in Britain. It's given Hamas a reason to celebrate and say that it's a victory for them, even though he stresses that the future will not be without Hamas. But how can it be in the present state? Yeah. I mean, and the hostages are still non-returned, so he needs to do something to get them back. I can't think it's anything else other than he's under pressure
and the
from
timing
the left.
Well, he's under pressure just before Jewish New Year. I mean, why? Why would you do that?
He's under pressure from the left wing of his own party. That's all it can be. I mean, he's tried to do what Tony Blair used to call triangulation just now by making the good wishes to the Jewish community to sort of bring everybody together on both sides of the argument. But of course, all that's done is to inflame the situation and to offend them. So. Not worked.
You can hear the phrase "up yours" coming out of synagogues all over the UK right now.
Absolutely.
And let's finally just a quick word on this. Broke in the last sort of hour and a half or so. The Ethiopian asylum seeker Hadash Kebatu jailed for a year after sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman. He committed offences just days after arriving on a small boat, and of course this really provoked a lot of protest and anger, understandably so. It rather reaffirms the idea, look, we're all for helping people, but we have no idea who these people are, where they came from, what their backstory is. Well, we know one of them is a sex offender. At least.
And, you know, there's so many undocumented young men living in communities now in hotels and not being watched. I mean, I think it'd be some relief that he has been convicted, and there will be some told you so going on here that, you know, we've said these people contain among them bad uns, and he's undoubtedly a bad un. The thing I'm interested in coming forward is when he served his 1 year in prison, was that the figure? It was
a year in prison, which would be what?
Was eight months.
What happens then?
Well, they say he's going to be deported, and he wants to be deported. But
he wants to be.
Apparently so. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see whether our friends, the legal system, will get involved in 8 months'
I can imagine this fella's he's got a home here for the next at least 4 years, I think. Dave, great to see you again. Thank you. Dave Wooding with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. We can moan and squeal about the fact we're royally skint as a country. The debt is ballooning by the hour. But how do you fill it? Where does the money come from? Should it be in taxation, cutting spending? Another form of thinking, how would you get the money into the system and where do you take it from? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. You can message 87222, and of course you can leave a voice note on the phone number as well, 0344 499 1000. So, where does Britain find the money to escape this fiscal black hole? Yesterday I heard Nigel Farage talking about saving, potential 230 billion by looking at a ban on non-British citizens claiming benefits. Labour eyes a 6 billion tax raid apparently on pensioners, landlords and the self-employed. This is the Resolution Foundation suggestion. There's all sorts going on in this story, and of course everyone becomes an armchair economist. We'll be speaking to Michael Simmons shortly, economics editor at The Spectator, also Professor Patrick Minford, absolute top of his tree in this field. First, James Smith, research director at the Resolution Foundation, who are behind some of these suggestions. James, good afternoon to you. I said at the beginning, everyone's an armchair economist. We all love it, whether we do it over a pint or whether we do it laid in bed going, if I was the Prime Minister, I would do this. This problem never goes away, really, for any government, does it? It's a case of finding, I suppose, the quickest, most efficient and fairest way of filling a perpetual black hole. Let's be honest, there's always a bit of debt hanging around.
Well, good afternoon. Yes, there's no secret that the budget in November is likely to have to come up with some tax rises following U-turns by the government, higher borrowing costs and worse outlook for economic growth. And what you're hearing from us today is a plea to the Chancellor to really need to react to all this decisively, to put the public finances on a sustainable path, and to really set out how she's going to do that in a way that improves the tax system, does it fairly, minimises the impact, as you say, and really ensures that we put behind us the sorts of problems that we're seeing in financial markets. We have the highest borrowing costs among rich countries. And as you say, one of the key proposals here is to do a tax switch between national insurance and income tax, because we agree with Jeremy Hunt that there's an unfair double tax on workers there. And that really would level out the tax system, raise about 6 billion and reduce those disincentives to work.
Did the Resolution Foundation just say, we agree with Jeremy Hunt? You don't hear many Tories say, we agree with Jeremy Hunt.
Well, we see the point he was making. So he was pushing towards phasing out national insurance. And our view is that the problem with national insurance is that it applies only to employees. So it basically creates a disincentive for working people.
Indeed. When I mentioned at the beginning about everyone being an armchair economist, and to a degree we all are, but of course there are some big voices. I mean, we had yesterday Nigel Farage saying, actually, I can solve this problem for you, Governor. 230 billion quid, bang, straight away. On the other side, if you like, on the sort of left-wing thinking, people like Dale Vince, the eco-millionaire, and Gary Economics, they're saying, well, what about a tax on people whose assets are over 10 million quid? That would be fair. That would also fill the blank. You'll be familiar with all of these kind of various sort of illuminated ideas, some of them quite seductive. They never seem to find their way onto the statute books.
No, and I wish there was a silver bullet here that I could come up with and say it's all very easy. We can find lots of money down the back of the sofa. But unfortunately, the truth is, with spending plans set and seemingly very difficult to cut further, we've seen the government struggling to do that. It looks like it comes down to tax policy to really fill the gap ahead of the budget. And what needs to happen is a very clear strategy to make the tax system fairer, minimise the impact. We think the government should do that by helping competition among workers, thinking about how it taxes some of the health harms that are involved in various types of activities, but yes, also reduces these disincentives to work and helps to support growth as well as raise some revenue.
There is some, I've heard voices on the right to kind of support the basic principle of the national insurance thing is a bit harsh and affects everyone, whereas the suggestion from the Resolution Foundation is that this would be a little more focused. But of course there are millions of self-employed people who say, hang on a second, the Chancellor said she wasn't going to raise my taxes, and this would raise their taxes.
This would raise their taxes. Their taxes would still be the lowest in decades, except for the past 2 years. That's for the sort of basic rate of tax for the self-employed. So this wouldn't be a huge increase for the self-employed. Would still be low by historical standards. And basically, the self-employed are benefiting at the moment from a tax break that incentivizes people, gets them away from working in employed jobs, and encourages people into bogus self-employment, really, to avoid that paying higher tax. And what we need to do is get that distortion out the system is a big problem during the pandemic. So trying to level that playing field is something that should help with the world of work.
James, great to have you on. Thank you, sir. James Smith, Research Director of the Resolution Foundation. We'll speak to Professor Patrick Minford in a moment. Firstly, Michael Simmons, Economics Editor at The Spectator. Afternoon to you, Michael. Good to have you with us. We're asking that question, I suppose, almost like in the way that Blue Peter would ask kids to name a pony at Christmas. We're asking, what is the answer to this? What's the best suggestion for where the money should come from in terms of filling that black hole? It's a never-ending conversation, really. We know there's never any conclusion to this under any administration, of course. But Nigel Farage has got his idea. The patriotic millionaires have got their idea. What's the answer?
Well, I think the ultimate answer, and the answer that a chancellor at some point in the future will be forced actually by the markets to make, is to seriously cut the size of the state. We spend, a staggering amount on public spending, and that's really shot up since before the pandemic, and kind of tax receipts have just not kept up with that. And that's the real problem why we keep saying we're in this doom loop, why we have this black hole. As your previous guest just explained, Rachel Reeves is not in a position to be the chancellor that does that cutting, quite simply politically. Labour don't want to do that. Her backbenchers would not tolerate her doing that. So she's going to look for these tax rises instead. But the trouble is that will just dampen growth, and the doom loop spins on, and eventually we will get to a point where we have a major conversation about what the state is, what it does for people, and how much we spend on it.
Indeed, and that's forever the kind of Gordian knot, isn't it, of running a country, because, of course, it's all very well saying, well, you go to people who are worth a few quid, tax them a little bit more. What do you do in year 2? Do you just go back to the same people and tax them a little bit more? You could keep playing that game until you've taxed people out of their own socks.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And it's not just, on the wealth tax. It's on if she goes for bits on capital gains, if she goes for pension pots. As you say, you just do that once, and then they all make the economy a little bit less efficient, and then GDP forecasts come down, and, next year we're having the exact same conversation. Where does she get 20 or 30 billion pounds from? And this is all the cause of the simple fact that we spend way, way more than we seem able to raise in taxes. Now, if she wants to make that sort of time before this problem really rears its head last a bit longer, she could do some more broad tax rises. So like the Resolution Foundation outlined, putting up the basic rate of income tax on everyone, because that brings in a bigger amount, although of course that would require her to break her manifesto promises, which she's pledged not to do.
And she hasn't just sort of casually pledged it. I mean, she's almost set her name by that one, hasn't she? No tax rises for working people. We've already had the national insurance, the employees' national insurance tax rise, which some people not unreasonably argued that affects working people, people who run small businesses, etc. But to start going down the path of literally increasing income tax, which this Resolution Foundation suggestion says she should, albeit for self-employed people, landlords, that kind of thing, that would be a straightforward break of her promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would argue one thing that it seems likely she will do is extend this threshold freeze, so that, you know, the thresholds for where you pay income tax, where you go up the brackets doesn't increase with inflation. She'll probably do that and say that that doesn't count as breaking her manifesto pledge. I think it arguably is. If she does follow the Resolution Foundation's suggestion, she definitely would be breaking that pledge. There's an interesting debate on this. If you speak to economists in banks who, you know, their job is to get these things right, they're fairly certain that the black hole that we all talk about is so big that she just will have to do that. But if you speak to people in Westminster who look at the politics of it, as you say, she's been so steadfast that she won't. It's hard to see how she could do that and survive as Chancellor. So it's unclear what's going to happen, really.
Indeed. We'll have the popcorn ready, that's for sure, come November. Michael, thank you. Michael Simmons, economics editor of The Spectator. Let's get a word from Professor Patrick Mimford, Professor of Applied Economics at Cardiff Business School. Patrick, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian.
You've been doing this job for long enough to have heard probably every suggestion possible. Why don't you just tax millionaires more? Why don't you cut the size of the state more? Why don't you stop immigrants claiming benefits, etc.? All of these things, I'm sure there are merits in all of these different suggestions. Is there a kind of a broad, not a catch-all answer, but is there a broad rule that ultimately every government, left or right, has to really run the books by?
Well, yes. The point is that it's all about long-run solvency. And what's happened is that every government has produced these short-run fiscal rules which don't tackle the problem of long-run solvency. Yeah. And so they've got themselves constantly into trouble because they won't think long-term about what our cloth is and how we've got to cut it and how we'll then fill the tax hole that will result over time. And then they've gone for these short-run fixes like Rachel Reeves has, where she's actually made things much worse by killing growth. I mean, she's raised taxes in a way that was completely crazy, that were absolutely likely to drive entrepreneurs into the ground. And so she's killed growth, of course, and that's made the fiscal situation long-term much worse. So the beginning of wisdom is really to get the tax system right and get rid of all these damaging taxes on business and entrepreneurs to start with. And that's what Liz Truss got right, of course, but then she got destroyed by the Bank of England and the Treasury and her own party. And so she never got a chance to implement quite a lot of sensible ideas that would maintain our our entrepreneurial Britain that Mrs. Thatcher put into place. But she wanted to keep that going, but Rachel Reeves has simply destroyed that, and of course that's what's killing growth. And if you kill growth, the fiscal outlook long term goes south with it. That's a fundamental problem. And then once you've got the basic incentives of tax right for the entrepreneurial community and business, then you can start to make plans for the long-term spending, which of course are quite serious for us because of our population problems and aging and so on and so forth.
When you hear the Resolution Foundation, not an organisation I would imagine you break bread with very often, but you understand where they come from on these things. They've made some suggestions. We know that the front bench, Mr Starmer, his head honcho, Morgan McSweeney, very heavily linked with this organisation. They're talking about, raise taxes by 2p, self-employed, etc., drop national insurance, things like that. Are these the very kind of short-term ideas that you're alluding to? Does this solve any substantial problem?
It doesn't solve anything at all. The fundamental problem is the long-term one that Rachel Reeves has now triggered by raising big tax rates on the people who make the big business investments and decisions, the entrepreneurial community. I mean, you go back to Nigel Lawson's budget in 1988, you see, he cut the top tax rates in those late 80s budgets, and that created the foundation for a growing economy. But what the latest government have done is to keep on chipping away at that. I mean, basically killing it. And that's the fundamental problem. So they need to completely reverse their thinking on these, on the tax regime for business and entrepreneurs. That's the fundamental problem that they've, and all these suggestions they're making are just making that situation worse.
Yeah. And just
wealth taxes, you can just see all these things coming out of the Resolution Foundation. They're all taking for granted the very entrepreneurial people that we rely on to create growth. I mean, it's madness.
What about, just a final point, Patrick, on this, and we hear this very often, I just cited it to our previous guest. Once in a while, somebody comes up with an idea and says, OK, what about if your income is over £500,000? So if we'll introduce another threshold, so if it's over £500,000, the tax rate will be 60p in the pound, just on £500,000. That will raise everything we need to raise in order to sort everything out, and we can all be very happy, and it's trebles all round for the British public. Is that hogwash?
Complete hogwash. I mean, but worse than hogwash, it will destroy the entrepreneurial community in Britain. You know, if you want to turn Britain into a backwater of the world, that's the way to go about it. So anyone with get up and go who wants to make money and build a business will just leave the place. So it's complete nonsense. I mean, you know, we got rid of that with the Lawson, the Thatcher budgets of the 80s. You know, we got rid of all that, and we were very successful for a time as a result of that. And since then, we backslid and said, oh, we can raise the top rate to this, and it's only the rich. But it forgets that the people we rely on to do the big bets are the rich.
Yeah.
You know, let's not be mealy-mouthed about it. We need the rich to kind of bankroll our society.
Indeed, and it comes back to kind of where we started about short-term thinking versus the more kind of long-term projective way of looking at things. Listen, Patrick, it's always a pleasure. Great to have you on with us again. Really appreciate it. Professor Patrick Minford. He's Professor of Applied Economics, Cardiff Business School, known, of course, in the trade as Mrs. Thatcher's favourite economist. I think he's rather on the money there, don't you? 0344 499 1000. Where would you suggest we get the wonga from? How do we fill this black hole? How do we get back into the black? Thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Jace in Dudley. Afternoon, Jace, who says, I'm 55, listened to loads of budgets and forecasts over the years. Can't remember a time when we're not in the doo-doo. So what have these useless governments been doing? Time for change, I think. So come on, reform. It's interesting that Patrick Minford, who's such a qualified voice on this, look, he divides the room a bit because he's a Thatcherite economist. But what he said was, you know, demonstrably true. Lawson's 1988 budget really was the point of takeoff for this country, and I don't think those events can be separated in any kind of way. If you set the terrain nice and ripe for people to make money and for businesses to come in and entrepreneurs to begin innovating and starting businesses, then, you know, it's not rocket science to work out how that would happen. If you suddenly said, right, top rate of income tax is coming down, or business rates are coming down. Let's speak to Matthew in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matthew? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. So, when the government put the extra increase on national insurances to employees in the last budget, consequently then, they're not employing people because, you know, in menial jobs, cafes, restaurants, hairdressers, because you can't afford it.
Yeah.
So now, when they are advertising jobs, young people, like my 16-year-old daughter can't get a job. She's left school, she goes to college, she wants to go to become a midwife, she can't get a part-time job in between. And when they go for interviews and jobs, they're selling it as a normal job, but it's not. They want you to go self-employed. So they don't have to pay the national insurance contribution.
Of course,
everywhere. So then consequently, they go in as self-employed. They're not paying, you know, they're not paying the taxes. They're not getting holiday pay. They're not getting all the benefits as being paid by the self-employed, and it's easier to get rid of.
Yeah.
But now, if she takes 2p off the national insurance and puts it onto your income, all these young people on minimum wage are going to get stung because they're self-employed. They're going to be paying more tax.
100%. Everything seems to be about getting people to pay more tax. There's got to be another way of dealing with this.
Well, you've got to stop spending it. We've got to rein it in.
Yeah.
It's like yesterday when you were saying about education. My daughter wants to become a midwife. When I was a kid at school and you was at school, you did metal work, you did woodwork, you did
woodwork and metal work.
There was a pathway into the big wide world. That's 100%. Not there now. So my daughter wants to be a midwife, but the only way she can do that now is by going learning child education first course level and going straight to nursing. So everything's against these young people. Getting a job and working is against them. So you think to yourself, what's the point? Everything's too hard.
It's crazy. Back in the day, I know I always quote this, you know, my auntie was a nurse and became quite a senior nurse, and she got a job. This is true, Matthew, and I'm sure it goes for... She got a job by going to the local hospital and knocking on the door, saying, have you got any jobs as a nurse? And they went, yeah, well, you know, we'll do an interview and then we'll train you. There was no 50,000 quid debt from university. She trained on the ground and got the job. It's quite simple, really.
They want you know, Tony Blair brought it in. You've got to have a degree. You've got to have a degree to be a policeman. So all you know, I'm an ex-serviceman. Once upon a time, ex-servicemen went into the police or the fire brigade.
Yep.
It's not allowed now because there's all these, like, you've got to be from an educated background.
It's unbelievable. How did somebody believe that we get something better just by convoluting the entire system? Matthew, I'm going to move on for no other reason to get another voice on before the news. You've been fabulous. Thank you for starting us off. Alan's in Salford. What have you got for us, Alan? Afternoon to you.
Ian, I'm quite annoyed at you. I've always liked you.
What have I done?
That statement, your first statement when you got on, you said take 2% off the national insurance and put 2% on tax.
Yeah.
My God. Let's have it right. The working man's paying enough in this country.
That wasn't my statement.
Sorry?
That wasn't my statement.
That's what you said. You have a look back. You said take 2% off national insurance and put up 2% on tax.
No, the Resolution Foundation are suggesting that.
Oh, sorry.
I was just reporting it.
You apologise.
That's all right, no problem.
Right, so what you should do, I'm afraid, I've just looked at the national minimum wage. It's £488 a week for 40 hours, right?
Yeah.
So these people who are just dossing about, you know, these benefit wallers, I'm really sick of it. And, you know, Well, it must be on more than £488 a week with all the benefits, rates paid.
Yeah, but is it worth just taking 200? Yeah, if you've got everything paid for, you're absolutely right.
Well, this is what's happening now in this country.
Quids in.
So what they should do, to be honest with you, is tax the benefits, because it's our money, it's the government's money they're giving them. Just tax it on them instead of cutting the benefits. Tax the
Well, that was partly, Nigel Farage's. I mean, this was only about foreign nationals, but you could apply it elsewhere. I think he is talking about applying it elsewhere. But you start to look seriously at this kind of eye-watering debt in the welfare department alone, which is so off the scale and through the roof. I mean, this is going to double almost. Yeah, it's 65 billion, so it's going to get to 100 billion. By the end of this Parliament. It's mad. Alan, thank you for that. You're right. I mean, you've got to look closely at this stuff. And as Professor Minford says, you've got to have a long-term vision. You can't just monkey around with kind of like, oh, this will be good for the next couple of years, or it sounds good on the 6 o'clock news when I announce it. You've got to think. I want intelligent people running the gaff, not half-wits who can't think beyond 6 p.m. Lines are open. This is Talk. Let's get the news headlines at 2.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of commenters. So much to get through. The key subject we're looking at here, and why would we not? How do we fix the Treasury black hole? We know it's absolutely huge. It's ballooning almost by the hour. We know Nigel Farage says cutting benefits for non-citizens will save $230 billion a year. Meanwhile, the Resolution Foundation say take that money off national insurance and add it onto self-employed income tax. An organisation called Patriotic Millionaires say tax people with assets over 10 million. All of these suggestions from the left and from the right are out there. But what is the best and the quickest and most efficient way of getting us back on a straight footing? Where should the money come from? 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump has claimed that paracetamol in pregnancy may raise autism risks despite no credible evidence. Health experts globally affirm its safety, warning that untreated pain actually poses a greater risk to pregnant mothers. And an Ethiopian asylum seeker, Hadesh Kabutu, has been jailed for assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. His conviction sparked national protests and nationwide outrage outside of asylum hotels. We'll take a little look at that story in more detail in just a few moments. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. And, of course, we'll bring you all the breaking news as well. Just a little word on the black hole. How do we solve this? Jeff in Aberdeenshire says, Ian, to fill the black hole, we need to get rid of extra ministers we have. Every one of them has a staff and half a dozen. I'm sure there were less ministers back in the day. I think you're probably right about that. A couple of other suggestions as well. On the same point, Tony in Norfolk says, abolish the House of Lords, reduce the Commons by 50%, cut the civil service and gold-plated pensions, shut down quangos. For goodness sake, curb the power and influence of lawyers. They're scamming us. I could go on. All of that stuff. Every time you mention a fairly common-sense list to a minister, they always come back with the same answer. Well, even if you did all of that, it doesn't actually save that much money in the grander scale. It's like, are you telling me that if you abolish the House of Lords, cut the House of Commons by 50%, reduce the civil service by 25%? Pretty sure that's a substantial amount of, to coin a phrase, a lot of wedge. I think it is. So let's move to this story then. This is Donald Trump back in true Trumpian fashion, sparking a major controversy, claiming that mothers taking paracetamol during pregnancy may increase the risk of autism in their children. Health experts globally have reaffirmed its safety, however, and warned that untreated pain does actually pose a greater risk to mothers and babies. Let's get a word from David Colquhoun, who's a biophysicist and statistician. I know he's tweeted a lot about this kind of issue. David, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, you know, if nothing else, Donald Trump does liven up the news agenda and allows, you know, for an awful lot of conversation. But this is very serious territory. He gave a press conference, and I would put this same point even to super fans of Donald Trump, made some very big remarks about what I always thought, and it seems the medical establishment agree, was a tried and tested and very safe drug for some very, very major controversial points without actually offering much evidence for it. What was your take on what the US president said?
What he said was perfect nonsense. He just makes stuff up. I mean, he's well known for making stuff up, I suppose, but when it comes to serious matters like this, that's a pretty worrying thing to do. And when he knows nothing of science, and he was told so by his Secretary for Health, I suppose, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who also knows nothing about science or medicine. He had a degree in American history, but it's a very curious phenomenon. People feel, well, the MAGA wing of the Republicans in America feel obliged to simply make up things. You can call them conspiracy theories if you want. It's almost as though the fact that something wasn't true is sufficient reason to advocate it. It's a sort of destructive tendency, I think, in their thinking.
And I suppose I mean, certainly with pharmaceuticals, as I'm sure you're aware, David, there's a long history of conspiracies around this area, because it's almost the perfect subject matter to advance the idea of kind of establishment, big corporation, cover-ups, money-making, control of the population, control of people. I suppose it has tentacles in all of those territories. Although Mr. Trump does say, and as far as I understand it, that the federal agency in charge of things stateside when it comes to pharmaceuticals and the like have sort of gone as far as saying there could be a link between paracetamol and autism, and it seems that that is the basis of which Mr. Trump and his health secretary are making these statements.
Yes, well, you can never prove that a risk is absolutely zero, but the fact is that there's only been one really good study of this, which is done in 2024 on a couple of million births in Sweden. And it was paid for by the National Institutes of Health as well, the American organization. And that showed that there was a very small risk if you just analyzed the raw data. The trouble is with analyzing the raw data of this sort is that you can't tell whether it's causal or not. It's a well-known problem of surveys that you can't distinguish what causes what. There was and so the way they addressed this was to look at brothers and sisters, siblings, one of whom had been exposed to paracetamol and the other hadn't. And they did it quite carefully. They looked to see whether there was a difference, whether it made a difference whether it was the younger one that had been exposed or not exposed. And when you looked at it within families like that, the risk was just vanished. And that is a very good way of doing it, which hadn't been done before, because it controls for the genetics. Children of parents who have autistic children are more likely to use paracetamol during pregnancy than those the parents who don't have it. So it's because it has a large inherited component. Of course, there's going to be a correlation, but it's not causal. The children of those parents were more likely to have autism, but that's not necessarily due to their exposure to the paracetamol, but because of the heritability of the condition.
How would that, just a layman's question then, I mean, many people might say, well, but surely that still leaves the reality that those mothers took paracetamol and therefore it could be causal.
Well, yes, it could be, but the fact that there was no association when you looked at it in this sibling way, brothers and sisters, suggests that it wasn't. Because there was a small correlation when you didn't look at it the sensible way, but it vanished when you looked at brothers and sisters. And that certainly suggests that the correlation you see on the raw data is spurious. It's a result of heritability, not of paracetamol.
And is there always going to be? I mean, is the reality, as a biophysicist, you'd have looked into all sorts of surveys on a whole range of things over your career. I mean, there's always ways of curving statistics. You're a statistician as well, so you will, you can, lies, damn lies and statistics. That old adage is, does play a part. And I guess, there will be some people, and I've already seen voices from the medical world, few and far between, who are actually corroborating what Mr. Trump said and said, no, if you look at this survey, you will see actually, what you've just said, David, might stand, but there's another way to look at this, and other people are producing surveys that say, look, this shows the very opposite. Well, what do you say to that? This constant, ongoing, well, if you read this, it says that, if you read that, it says this.
Well, people will advocate what they believe anyway, by and large.
But that's what's going on here, isn't it? Really?
They don't get much notice of evidence. No, but the fact was that the Swedish survey, by far the best one, did show a slight association if you looked at the raw data. But when they looked at it again using the brothers and sisters method, then that correlation vanished.
Right.
So it didn't disagree with the earlier ones, it just said that the earlier ones were wrong.
Yeah, and this was 2.5 million children they used in this survey, as I understand, so it wasn't an insignificant survey in that respect. Listen, David, great to have you on, sir. Thank you very much indeed. David Colquhoun, biophysicist and statistician. I do think the one thing I think most people can agree on is that there is a... And it's fact, if you look back at the history of this, and we know we had a bit of it with COVID, and we know that, you know, it's right to have concerns over, I mean, God, I've got 2 kids, you know, it worries the life out of me. You know, the emails have just come round for both of them. They're in different age groups. The flu vaccine, we've got the flu vaccine is ready to go. They've never had it, and there's no reason for that. There's no like, oh God, the flu vaccine's going to kill them or anything like that. But the kind of hesitancy to me is based on the fact that they are quite fit and healthy 7 and 11-year-olds. So I've got a funny feeling. I've never taken a full flu vaccine in my life. I've never really needed one, but I don't think I've had flu. If I've had a bit of man flu, I think that I'm told by medics that's a slightly different thing, although I would argue against it on a good day. I've never needed it, and I don't think they need it, to be honest. But there's always been an underpinning of distrust that when it comes to routine inoculations, vaccinations, is there a difference? And other forms of kind of medicinal solution, there's always been that belief by a small contingent of people that this is governments putting drugs into people in order to, create another set of headlines, whether those headlines are about distrust, whether they're about reducing population. You know, there's always been this kind of belief that's there. It's mostly not borne out in any kind of fact, but like all conspiracies, there's always a little kernel there that you go, well, what about that story? Let's talk to Robert in Nottingham on this issue. Robert, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit flabbergasted at the reaction to what Trump said. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know where there is any links, but do people think that Trump woke up yesterday morning and thought, I know, let's tell pregnant women not to take paracetamol? Let's say in a year or two a link is proved, then the media would have a field day criticising Trump for not issuing a statement. And also, the other thing I just add to this is who's funding all the research? As you alluded to a minute or two ago, there are ways of interpreting information, and so on. And let's be honest, there's some big business in the drugs industry.
Well, I was going to say, but could that, in some respects, I mean, I've seen a few people commenting on this already, Robert, saying, well, actually what Trump did in that press conference, he said, look, paracetamol, terrible, don't take it. But then he advocated another drug. Now, I don't know what the research on autism is in the other drug, but there might be people who go, hang on a second, that's a bit iffy, isn't it? He's advocating another drug, which is probably more valuable to the American pharmaceutical industry than paracetamol is, which is not worth very much in the grander scale.
I think the problem is that Trump, in his usual way, was a bit candid. I think it would have been better to have Kennedy. Maybe they did have Kennedy on first.
But then he's got a long history of saying a lot of stuff that also many people in the medical world disagree with.
And I think maybe that's why Trump decided to say something. Because if Kennedy had said something on his own, everybody would say, oh, he's an anti-vaxxer, doesn't know what he's talking about, and so on. I mean, I have a great nephew who has autism, severe autism. He's about 11 or 12, so I have some interest in this to an extent. But I'm just saying, surely if there is a slender bit of evidence that says there is a connection, it would be better to err on the side of safety.
What about just a final point then on this, I mean, yeah, we should always err on the side of safety. 2.5 million children that were studied in the Swedish survey, almost every clinician you speak to it seems to be in tandem here, saying, hang on, there are people who don't take paracetamol and already don't take it, like there's people who don't take penicillin and things like that. If the body of evidence, and this I suppose is a wider argument just about the drugs we take to cure our ailments. You can take chemotherapy, of course, and unfortunately chemotherapy literally kills some people. It totally wipes them out. But on balance, and that's the point, isn't it? That on balance, do we ban something that may have an effect on a small amount of people?
I think, as with all drugs, there is a trade-off between potential benefits and risks.
Yeah.
We saw that with the COVID vaccine and all sorts of other vaccines, and that's really what we're talking about to a certain extent here. As I say, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the answer
and
is.
That is always the overarching kind of headline for all of us, isn't it? We're not doctors. Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. T says, please don't be dishonest, as other stations. You know damn well this wasn't Trump's findings. I don't think anybody would suggest it was Trump's findings, would they? I would have to know. I don't think anybody anywhere on the planet thought that Donald Trump founded this theory, that he woke up in the morning and went, I've just been doing some research. So there's no dishonesty in that respect. It was the scientific and medical staff at the Department for Health who have allegedly found a connection between the two. Trump was just trying to be the first to inform people. Unfortunately, he's a bit of a buffoon when it comes to explanations and should have been left to one of the professionals. I certainly agree on the last point. I don't think he's very... he talked the day before. I think it might have even been at Charlie Kirk's memorial that he made, said, we've got big announcements coming tomorrow. We think we've solved autism, or something as bold as that. And I thought, what, really? I think we've solved autism. I don't know. I do know that it's in the kind of DNA of Trump's administration. And if you look at Kennedy, who's his RFK Jr., his health spokesman, there's been a lot of mood music around him and the kind of things he said, and much of that has been discredited. And, much of it for other people will be, a point for debate. But regrettably, I sense that all of this stuff ends up just dividing down the political lines, not the medical ones. That seems to be what happens. 0344 499 1000, 20 past 2. This is Talk.
I mentioned the Singaporean model, right? They review it every 5 years. You've got to actually be able to bring benefits. You've got to be able to prove that you can integrate. I think actually you walk around your home, Julia, in London, and I imagine that you'll find many people not too far away from where you are that simply do not integrate within British life.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, we cannot have the social cohesion that we have been so used to for so very long if we actually allow this to continue.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Justina says, I don't mind people arguing against what Trump came out with yesterday on the subject of paracetamol, but when they attack the man and say he's just making it up, they damage their own credibility. There's been a review done at Harvard on this, and I guess others as well. It's tricky, isn't it? It's hard to work out. Trevor says, if you doubled RFK Jr.'s IQ, he'd still need watering every day. That's an interesting line. Who knows? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medic. I have literally no idea, and neither do most people. It usually, I'll say it again, falls down on political lines. So if you like that administration, you'll believe it. If Joe Biden had said this, where would you be on the subject? Where would you be on this subject? If Kamala Harris had said there's a link between, and she'd taken some research, there is no doubt that the Trump administration want to shake up the pharmaceutical industry, and there's no doubt that Kennedy Jr. Has a big area of interest in this specific field. Let's go back to the subject we began with as well, the black hole. How do we fill it? The Treasury saying we've got to find some way of doing it. We are 2 months away from a budget. Almost 2 months to the day. John's in Bradford. John, what's going on? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, I've got a long list, so I'll be as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Right. The first thing I would do is to take all the immigrants out of the hotels and out of the houses of multiple occupancy, put them into a refugee camp, and allow the UNHCR to run it, and they pay for it. That's number one.
Okay.
Right. Number two, I would reduce the civil service by about 30%. I would get rid of net zero. I would abolish the House of Lords and have 180 directly elected senators. Members of Parliament would have a defined pension scheme rather than the one they've got now. Mm-hmm. Block any more immigrants coming in. If you've got to use the Navy, use the Navy, and reduce taxes on individuals and companies, and allow drilling of oil and gas, and that would basically solve your problem.
Yeah, I like it. Have you told the Treasury this yet?
Well, they wouldn't listen anyway.
Just knock on the door of number 11 Downing Street. They'll be all ears. You never know. John, thank you very much indeed for that. Really appreciated. Louis says, Collins, did you take the COVID vaccine? Had one. I was probably part of about 1% of the population that only had one. And I had one because at the time, we were all trying to save the planet. Do you remember? I never had a second, therefore obviously never had the booster and all that stuff. Just had one. Apparently I had COVID at some point. I registered positive for COVID, but didn't think I had no symptoms. I remember that much. It said I was positive. I'd had maybe a tiny, tiny cough. Could have been imagining that. How many times do you sort of a day? Probably about 1,000, maybe more. Who knows? And that was it, really. I think there were two reasons I had it. One is because pretty much, was it 89, 90% of the population had it. And so there was that sense that, well, you know, this is going to help me. But I don't even think it was really that. My mate got COVID, I remember this, before I had the jab, and was I mean, I never saw somebody so bad, OK? This wasn't flu. This was something so much worse than flu. And this is a really fit guy. He's about 36 at the time. And he was absolutely floored for about 3 weeks. Maybe it was that. Maybe I thought, I don't want that. I don't want that. Maybe that's why I didn't get that, because I had the jab. I don't know. But as a fit and healthy bloke that's not yet described as really old, then I thought, I don't think I'm going to really... So I didn't bother with the rest of it. Never advocated anybody else should have it either, for that matter. It should always been a choice. I'm not suggesting that if the Great Plague comes around, I don't know how you answer that. You know, something genuinely is going to kill people as soon as you look at each other. What is the answer? You can't force people to have a vaccination. Fact. Ben in Essex. Ben, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
How you doing, Ian? Yeah, very well.
I'm good, yeah.
Good to speak to you again. Yeah, just about the black hole and this, you know, what can we do? I like what your last caller said, that list, and I agree with everything that man says. But I also agree with lowering taxes.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we need some boldness to try and incentivise business in this country.
Yeah.
You know, the more we tax, the less we're going to spend. Companies are going to get squeezed and companies are going to go under. It's going to make the situation worse. You know, dropping things like IR35 and even taxes will create more spending in the economy, which is what you want. Because if you're spending more, there's going to be more money floating around. There's going to be more tax.
Well, that's the bit that the Treasury don't get, is it? They are, you know, sort of this idea, this obsession with the tax bit, but not on what people spend and how much they spend and what they create and the sense of being incentivised to create more.
I don't know whether these people are just stupid or that they don't have any idea at all. And I think it might be a bit of both, but you need to understand business and understand that there's more money people are going to spend. And also, if you're incentivising businesses, not only are you going to have more money coming in and more tax being paid and spent, but you're going to have more money circulating, which will mean more jobs, more people paying. But no one's bold enough to do it, Ian, I think. It's just what's in front of you. Let's start squeezing that person, like, you know, almost like giving out more parking tickets. You know, let's try and... I don't
well, that's the short-term thinking, isn't it, that the guy was saying. You can give out the parking tickets, and that will probably look great on the books for a couple of months, Look, we've raised X amount of £1 million. And then you realise, you know, further down the line, look, all those cars no longer come into town. They've decided to go somewhere else where they're not going to be penalised out of their pants for having the audacity to park a car.
And this is true, and this is the thing. The more people that are out of work, businesses going under, it's going to put more costs on the nation because you're going to have more people on benefits. And I think you need to look at the bigger picture more. And unfortunately, we don't have politicians that have been in business and understand this.
Yeah,
and
spot on.
I think, you know,
well, there's no one on the current front bench who's been in business, as far as I can tell.
No. And
how terrifying is that?
The more you squeeze businesses, the less they're going to spend, and it's just going to make this situation worse. And you know, this country will end up bankrupt in a depression, a recession.
Yeah.
If we, you know, we need to be incentivising these businesses, these people, these companies, things like IR35. Drop that. Let people get into work and start small and then become wealthy. But I think our government are in for that sort of thing.
They are. It's in their kind of blood, isn't it? They're kind of big fans, super fans of that way of running things, and ultimately it amounts to very little other than misery, frankly, for the economy. Ben, you've been fabulous. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Just a reminder that Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, is about to give his keynote speech. We'll be taking the whole thing live here on the programme from start to finish. You won't miss anything. I am joking, of course, as if I put you through that kind of horrendous disaster. Not a chance. It's 2:30. We're going to be back with more from you coming next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dr. Bamboo, is that a real name? So she just said that 90% of the UK population had the first COVID jab. The actual statistic is between 81% and 86%. It wasn't that far out, was it? Between 81 and 86% had the first jab. I apologise for saying about 90% had it. There you go. I hope that solved that, Dr. Bamboo. If that was your doc, would you go to see a Dr. Bamboo? I don't know. You might go, hey, he ain't real, is he? Dr. Bamboo? Now, Sarah Ferguson is facing intense scrutiny over her ties with Jeffrey Epstein, who she once called a supreme friend. Leaked emails and photos with Epstein's staff reveal lingering connections, sparking a charity backlash, as we reported yesterday, and damaging the royal family's reputation. Ferguson's place in royal circles now hangs in the balance. She was always a sort of an outrider, wasn't she? But clearly very close to Andrew. I think she still lives with. Let's speak to former royal editor at The Sun, Charles Ray, is with us. Afternoon to you, Charles. I mean, just remind me of that. She still lives with Andrew, doesn't she? Which is
absolutely.
Curious arrangement.
Yeah. Still lives. It's always very curious that this is the best divorced couple in the world. They live together. And recently, because of the fortunes or the lack of fortunes in Andrew's background, because of the Epstein scenario, it's been regarded that Fergie herself has been contributing money for the upkeep, which is thousands and thousands of pounds a week, to help them stay there. I think all this is about to change, though, because I can't see how they can possibly carry on living in Royal Lodge. As we know, the King has been trying to get his brother out of there to smaller premises. He's taken away his taxpayer security. He no longer gets any funds from the taxpayer. He's very much on his own financially. But the fact that this has happened, that Fergie has now been drawn in, not drawn in, I mean, I've covered Fergie since the mid-80s, and I've covered practically every controversy that she has been involved in. And this is a lady who is you're steeped in controversy. I've not been appalled by some of the things that she's got involved in, but this one takes the biscuit, the fact that she has linked herself with Epstein. And let's not forget that the Epstein drama started to implode in 2005. By 2011, he had already been convicted of paedophilia.
Yeah.
And that's when she wrote that first email saying, I abhor, paedophilia and everything else, quite rightly so. And then a few weeks later, she's writing another email saying what a great guy he is, a very good friend and everything else. And she says she did it on advice from her people because Epstein was about to sue her to be linked because she was linking him with paedophilia. Didn't use the word paedophile, but linked him with pedophilia.
Yeah.
But you think, why would you worry about that?
But he's already convicted at that stage.
Sorry?
He's already convicted at that stage.
Yeah, he's already convicted. He's admitted it. And then it only gets worse from that time on. And from what we read this morning, that she was still in touch with Epstein or staying at one of his places up until 2013. So, this is someone who has made an awful lot of mistakes, but this one is a corker. And the very fact that her charities are dumping her like a snowball is quite telling, and that will really, really hurt her. I mean, I've seen this woman work with her charities, and she has been very good spokesperson for the charities in the past. But it's very much like Prince Andrew. Who the hell wants someone who is linked with a paedophile as a figurehead, or someone who speaks for the charity? Nobody.
Yeah. You'd remind. In fact, I'd forgotten about this, thankfully, Charles, until you sort of tacitly reminded me there. You talked about other scandals, and I was, my brain automatically saw the toe-sucking headlines from back in the day, in the early 90s, and you'd have thought, well, for someone in royal circles, that was not a great look. That seems very, very tame to what is going on here. This is serious stuff, isn't it now?
All of that was very, very tame. Don't forget as well, she's been on the brink of bankruptcy twice now, and we're not talking about a few quid. We're talking about 4 million first of all, and 5 million second time. We're also talking about her trying to sell access to Prince Andrew to an undercover reporter as well at some stage. And these are just the headline ones. She's not been doing at all well. And I'm afraid that second email that she sent, imploring him to, forgive her and everything else, is a killer punch. And I have to say, if you lie down with dogs, you will eventually catch fleas. And she's been catching an awful lot of fleas over her years.
Indeed. Charles, great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Charles Ray, former royal editor at The Sun. She has been absolutely riddled in them as well. And this latest one, I don't think there's a way back from that, isn't there? Cozying up and sending fluffy, friendly emails to somebody who'd already embroiled in all manner of allegations about underage sex and goodness knows what else. I mean, a lot was known at the time that Sarah Ferguson was writing these letters. So she's kind of done for now, dropped by, was it 7 or 8 charities now? Doesn't she write some children's books about a helicopter or something? That's probably going to go as well. Not a good look. Kevin, the medical student, says, you're not far wrong, Ian. This is on COVID vaccine. I know how we got into this. By the end of August 2022, about 88.2% of people aged 12 and over in the UK had received 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine. That comes from Kev, brackets medical student. I'm just reading that out. I can't corroborate it in any form. The vast majority of Brits did, was the point. Paracetamol, that's a whole different ball game, isn't it? That kind of stuff is popped on a daily basis, and it does work as well. But I'm under no illusion, and this came out around about the same time. Remember when people were sort of arguing that the COVID vaccine is going to kill you, the COVID vaccine is going to give you cancer, it's going to send you doolally. And of course there are some quite obvious cases, undeniable cases, where people had not only bad but even fatal reactions to the vaccine. COVID doesn't differ in that respect from many other vaccines where there can be the worst kind of side effect to it, obviously. And that, of course, I don't know how you address that moral dilemma. Do you unleash something on the market that is mostly going to be good for most people most of the time, but there will be side effects for other people? It's the same with anything. And at the time, paracetamol, I remember people saying, well, actually, did you know X amount of people die a year from paracetamol? And nobody really talks about that. And I'm sure you could look at, I'm sure there's a cough mixture you can buy over the counter that if the wrong person took it at the wrong time, you know, something awful could happen. Who knows? David in Cheshire says, Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew, Mandelson, Starmer, Rayner, Captain Tom's daughter and son-in-law, they're all out of the same mould. Yeah, I mean, there is some interesting connections of names there. I don't think Captain Tom's daughter had anything to do with Epstein or paracetamol, for that matter, but or anything else. But yeah, people who gravitate towards some kind of fame or notoriety, I think, is the point that David is making there. And maybe there was something in that for her, but certainly the others, absolutely. Let's go to Norman in Dartford. What's happening, Norman? Can you sort the economy out for us here this afternoon?
Well, yeah. Well, we live beyond our means and have done for many years. And this government will never cut spending.
Yeah.
He's had his fingers burnt once. He won't do it again. Now, we had the rise in national insurance for employers, and that caused unemployment and inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've got a chancellor, got a master's degree in economics. If she can't see that would be one of the unintended consequences, defeats me.
You'd think, wouldn't you? And this is the bit where I'm lost on this, Norman, that you would have, you know, so Liz Truss comes up with an idea for the economy which was widely derided. It got derided so badly the markets crashed and everyone said she was mad and she walked the plank. You would think that Rachel Reeves would get, and Liz Truss, if they were sitting down at a table, there's certain things in economics you would think are non-debatable, right? There's certain facts that if you do this, you will raise this much money. You wouldn't think that would... Obviously, there's going to be theories on how much, but broadly speaking, there doesn't appear to be any irredeemable facts in this discussion, and that's the confusion.
Well, at the moment, I think we're at a cliff edge because beyond our control is the bond market.
Yeah.
And if we don't do something, and they don't come across with the loans because they're at record levels, I believe.
Yeah.
The interest on them, and the only way to do it, and I'm against everything I think I believe in, is to raise the basic rate of income tax.
Yeah.
To get us out of this black hole.
So you do a could you do a and it wouldn't be desirable for those that have got to pay it, but could you do a kind of like a temporary? I know you have to be wary when governments say this is temporary.
Until you get back on a level playing field.
But then in the meantime,
like we are.
Yeah, no, I get it. But in the meantime, Norman, you'd have to find a way, wouldn't you, to make sure that when you come out of the temporary income tax hike, that you've got a new system in place that's going to cover it.
Yeah, exactly. But you've got to be able to control spending.
Yeah.
And this government will not. People won't listen. They will not cut spending. No good saying we should be doing this, doing that. They're not going to do anything.
I think it's going to get worse, though. I think it's going to get worse with the population growth. I think it's going to get worse with the length of time people are living for, the amount of people that seem to be out of work for, you know, whatever reason, but the health-related reasons, often mental health, the amount of young people that aren't working, the social care problem, the pressure on the NHS, pension. I can't see how any of this can get better. This looks like something from a kind of horrendous film script.
You tell me how we're going to get more money.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that is literally the question. How do we get more money? We either tax something or we cut something.
Tell me how we're going to get more money into the economy the way we are at the moment.
Listen, Norman, you raise a great question, and thank you for that. Norman's suggestion, well, you'd have to temporarily hike income tax. What else are you going to do? But if you did it temporarily, firstly, you've got to be really careful of governments that say, oh, it's only temporary. I think income tax in itself was once only temporary, I think. You'd have to have a big plan in place, wouldn't you, to fill the gap once the temporary hike reverted back to its previous level. Chris is in London. What's going on, Chris? Afternoon to you.
Hi, sir. Hi, can you hear me?
Very loud and clear. What are your thoughts?
Sir, okay. I've just read through the internet, yeah? And this may not be right, or might be wrong, yeah? The MPs defined pension scheme, yeah? Had a £1 billion shortfall, and the explanation provided was poor investment in green technology, £1 billion. The BBC have an £850 million deficit on their defined pension scheme.
Wow.
Yeah? No, I'm adding up the numbers.
Yeah,
if you go to everything else, yeah? The NHS, everything else, the civil service, everything else, you're talking about maybe 20 billion pounds, yeah? But let's put this in perspective, yeah? All the civil service are on defined benefit schemes, inflation-proof. So if inflation goes way above 20%, they don't care because they're going to get that. And same with the MPs.
Yep.
There's no consequences with them. Yeah. Now, what I would say to you, the state pension should be the basic. After contributing 40 years or 36 years more as the currently, but it should be 40 years. Because once you get after 40 years of contributing to the state pension scheme, you should be entitled to a state pension.
Sure.
Now, by the way, when they disclose the state pension figures, they're showing the gross numbers. But most people have other income because they've worked 40 years of their life. They've slaved for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then they get the pension, state pension, and then they get taxed. What you don't see is the tax that's been deducted from the gross number. So what actually is, the state pension might show 100 million, whatever it is, the number is. But take off the tax, you'd be probably looking at probably 40, 45, 50 million. I don't know what the number is. The problem is, and I'm going to be honest with you, yeah?
Have you gone, Chris? You're there, sir. Dramatic pause. Go on, fire away.
I will see any reduction in NHS contributions, the national insurance contributions.
Yep.
They should never touch that because that's a guarantee that you will get something at the end of it.
Got it.
And when services dropped the number, they dropped it by 2 or 3%.
Yep.
That was wrong. That was just buying votes.
And that's the problem. You know what? You've touched on something bigger there, because buying votes is what the whole thing ultimately is about. And there's no party that's being really brave enough to go, right, some of this is going to be about as popular as measles. But we're going to have to do it because if you watch, this will work long term. But you've got to be in it for the long haul. Chris, I've got to move. Great call. Thank you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
the overall cost of it, not just with universal credit, but with other benefits as well. If there is a foreign-born national inside just one household, that's costing taxpayers upwards of £1 billion a month, which is like £12 billion a year, which is more than enough to take a penny off income tax.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. It's the voice of doom, day 7. Day 7, this is the mystery voice of a political nature. Don't go away, Chris, with you in a second. Yeah, so it's a mystery voice. Think of a politician. Past, present, could be from the last 5 months, could be from the last 5 decades. Simple question, who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
I think it's a stinker. I think it's tough. Every time I say it, somebody gets it right. If you think you know who this is...
Got off to a pretty messy start.
87222. Hopefully we get somebody with the right answer. If not, it rolls over. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
We'll give you the answer if we get a correct one after the news at 3. Chris is in Epsom. What's going on, Chris?
Hi, it's nice to talk to you again.
And you too. What's happening?
Well, now everybody's talking about the Boris wave, so that's out in the open now, which is really good because, Labour are talking, we'll have a consultation on it at the end of the year. They're going to do nothing. But at least for us, has got it up and running. And talkTV, congratulations to all the presenters. Now,
well, not all of them.
As for what does Starmer do? If Starmer... Jesus, I can't say what I was going to say.
Go on, fire away.
If I was advising Starmer right now, he's a busted flush, and he's not going to get any help from within his own party. He's not going to get any help from anyone. He's sat out there on his own. He's made that ridiculous Palestine recognition without a word about the hostages, without nothing, which, on the day he did that, Hamas come out and say it's the fruits of October the 7th. And he's got a Jewish wife and Jewish kids.
I know. I wonder how that played out. I mean, somebody said yesterday that she was practising, and I said this like slightly naively. I mean, I know enough Jewish people, for goodness sake, but some practising, some not. My reading of it, like if you're a practising Christian, you'd probably only marry another Christian, wouldn't you? And if you were Jewish, you'd marry another Jew.
No, it's quite normal. But the Jewish lineage always goes down the matriarch line, not the patriarch line.
Well, no, it does indeed. But would you not, if you were practising, would you not surely desire to be with somebody for the rest of your life who shared your spiritual and religious values?
It's difficult because...
Or Keir Starmer, who shares no one's values. It's an old one.
Yeah, well, he hasn't got any, has he? He's got no moral compass whatsoever. He's probably phoned up Lord Ali see if he can borrow the flat in Soho again.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Chris. He thinks he has got morals. He thinks he's got morals that you and I couldn't even dream of having. No, he believes he's on the right side of the whole thing. Human rights lawyer, his knowledge of human rights extended to him getting the top job as the head of the...
I don't know.
What was he?
I don't know. I don't know what.
I can't even think of the name of the title of his job. Yeah, Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP. That's it. I nearly said DWP. That might be where he ends up next.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine what turned him out to be the man that he is, because you don't put your fellow countrymen behind immigrants. You don't do all the things that he's done. I mean, he's certainly, as I was trying to say when you cut across me, I bet he's on the phone to Lord Ali at the moment trying to get the flat back in Soho, because he certainly ain't getting any at home.
Quite possibly.
Now, the thing is, you can cross religion, because actually I'm a practicing Christian, and my girlfriend of 7 years is a Muslim. Now, yes, it does throw up some problems, but she believes in one God. She hasn't read the whole of the Quran. She doesn't understand the 186 hadiths. I've actually read the whole Quran and the hadiths. I've got a copy here. Not the fluffy copy you get from mosques. If you go and ask them for one, they'll give you one for free. I've got one that is as literal translation as you can get. It's scary stuff.
Yeah.
And the people that follow it word to word are very, very scary. But there are good Muslims as well. I mean, I was at Reform's conference, right, to see...
Well, if your girlfriend of many years is a Muslim, I'd imagine you haven't really got much of a problem with Muslims.
No, I haven't. I sat with... I managed to have 5 minutes private conversation with Zia. I found him an incredibly charming guy, really, really intelligent, and I said to him, you know, it must be really, really difficult because you're going to get it from both sides. You get the people that say he's only pretending to be Reform, he's a Muslim, and then you've got all the Muslims going at him.
No, he's not. I mean, you are allowed to believe the same thing even if you're a different faith. Listen, I've got to move for no other reason, Chris, than we're about to have the news come and jump in the middle of our conversation. Don't go away. Andrew in Cambridge here will be with you shortly as well. Matt in Ely says, I've just been hit by my first ever COVID. It's not good. No energy and cold. The worst thing I could taste my beans on... And the worst thing, I couldn't taste my beans on toast at lunchtime. That's the most miserable. I didn't, because I didn't really have it, or if I did, well, apparently I did, but I didn't have any effects. When people lost their taste, and for a long time as well, months for some people before it came back, I thought that'd be like, to me, losing my eyesight. You need to taste your grub, don't you? Here's the voice of doom.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know who that is, find out the answer after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So much to get through. We began, but we've talked about so much here this afternoon. It's absolutely rammed. How do we fix the Treasury black hole? Where does the money come? It's got to come from somewhere. Where does it come from? Do you tax? Do you cut spending? What do you do? Farage has got his suggestion in terms of tackling things like migration and welfare. We know that the Resolution Foundation, which is where this story started, are talking about taking money off the cost of national insurance, so making national insurance contributions cheaper, but adding it to some people's taxes, not everybody. Patriotic millionaires advocate for taxing people whose assets are over £10 million. What is the answer to this? Because the money, if it's not already run out, it's about to get a whole lot worse. We could be in up to our neck in it by the end of this Parliament. Thoughts on that? Lines are open. Also, Donald Trump has claimed that paracetamol in pregnancy may raise an autism risk, despite there being no credible evidence. Health experts globally affirm its safety, warning untreated pain is actually a greater threat than this. And an Ethiopian asylum seeker has been jailed for assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman just days after arriving on a small boat. He was given a year in the slammer. That'll be around about 7 or 8 months if for good behaviour. His conviction, of course, sparked nationwide process outside asylum hotels. More on that story as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Couple of points of note. Ed Davey has given his keynote speech to the Lib Dem conference. Both the people in the audience seem to be enjoying it so far. And Donald Trump is addressing the United Nations. Is he up to that now? I think he started, or he's about to start, in New York. That's another big one to keep our eye on. So anything that comes of that, we'll bring it to here on Talk. In terms of the UN, Brian from England says, why does the UN not sort the global migration of poor people across the world by creating a safe processing centre on an island or a small country to legally and fairly help these people? What is the UN for? I think you've rather hit on a frankly fantastic point, Brian, purposely or not. Nobody really knows what the UN is for, and I've said this for years. If you went to New York, where the UN headquarters is, and you halved the size of the building, and therefore all the offices and the people within that half that you removed, no one on planet Earth would notice the difference. Nobody really knows what the UN is, or what it's referred to, it's deferred to, it's talked about as almost like the Oracle of Delphi, like that this is some kind of spiritual home of all that is good, correct and right. Until you look at some of the members of the UN, by the way, then you start to wonder a little. Nobody really knows. And you're absolutely bang on. I've thought this long and hard about Ukraine, about what is happening in all sorts of different places. You know, who are the UN? What do these people do all day? And if the United Nations cannot sort out the catastrophe of immigration, which is affecting not just this country, but just about every Western country on the planet, then you have to really say, I'm sorry, UN, your number's up, mate. End of story. It's quite extraordinary that this thing gets a free pass. 0344 499 1000. And we've just heard that Home Office has lost a Court of Appeal bid to challenge a High Court ruling that granted an Eritrean man temporary block on his deportation to France. So you may remember this story a couple of weeks ago. A fella from Eritrea was penciled in to be sent back to France under this one-in, one-out thing, two-in, that thing. He appealed, then the government appealed, then now the Home Office has lost the Court of Appeal bid to challenge the High Court ruling that granted the man a temporary block on his deportation to France. So make of that what you will. Now, Keir Starmer has announced the UK recognition of Palestine. As you well know, there's 150 other nations who back the two-state solution. Critics, including Jewish groups, have slammed the timing of this. Of course, this comes as Jewish New Year is upon us, calling it tone-deaf and accusing Starmer of rewarding terrorism without conditions, like, for example, maybe releasing the hostages. Could that not have been an explicit request in this? Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said when talking about his new recognition and acknowledgement of a place he calls Palestine. Have a listen to what the Prime Minister said.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
Yeah, and again, we must have missed the bit about the hostages and release, and, you know, we will never recognise you until that happens. Maybe it was in the small print somewhere. Daniel Burke is Director of UK Lawyers for Israel. You're always across these things, Daniel. Good afternoon to you, by the way. Did I miss that bit somewhere?
No, Ian, you didn't, and thank you for having me on again.
Pleasure.
You hit the nail on the head, Ian, when you said that he could have made this conditional, for example, on... And Singapore, their foreign minister, has just said they won't recognise Palestine until the Palestinians have an effective government, renounce terror and recognise Israel. At the moment, there is no recognition of the state of Israel. So the idea that the two could live together in harmony is a myth.
Yeah.
And what Keir Starmer has done, this is appeasement, it rewards terror, it's prolonged the war, it's increased the suffering of Palestinians, it's increased the likelihood that very few of the remaining hostages will survive, it risks international security, and it's unlawful, and it's an insult to international law. In July, the Prime Minister gave this ultimatum: reach a ceasefire or we'll recognise Palestine in September. Yeah. What that did, Ian, was it simply meant that Hamas was incentivised not to reach a ceasefire, to keep it going for a few months. Yep. A major power, and of course also France and Australia, will then recognise a Palestinian state. So there was no incentive for Hamas to reach any deal which included releasing hostages. And that we can't know. In July, talks were progressing. It's possible a ceasefire could have been reached. It's possible that the remaining hostages could have been released. We can't know for sure, but certainly the way in which Keir Starmer structured his ultimatum gave an advantage to Hamas not to reach a deal. So during that time, hostages have died. During that time, Palestinians have suffered. And yesterday, when he did say hostages must be released immediately, he did not make this a condition of recognising Palestine.
One might have thought that would... I mean, I genuinely thought when the mood music around Starmer, and, you know, we know that it's kind of, you know, in his political DNA to want to recognise Palestine, but I thought, you know, now he's the Prime Minister, then there would be, quite genuinely, I would have put money on it, Daniel, that he would have said that, and that would have been the condition. You know, at some point down the line, we might find a way to recognise this area and give it the name Palestine. But before you get to that stage, this has got to happen. And when you consider what happened on October 7th and all that has happened since, it is beyond extraordinary that no advisor around the Prime Minister of this country suggested to him that you have to reference this.
If this was genuinely about reaching peace, then he may have approached this in the way that Singapore did, or indeed the way in which the Abraham Accord countries are approaching it. What's being discussed now with Abraham Accord countries, so Dubai, UAE, Bahrain, plus the Saudis, is that in Gaza there'll have to be a period of de-extremification, denazification. There'll have to be investment, identify new leaders over time, and work towards it. I don't believe that Keir Starmer could have seriously thought that this is going to advance peace. It's hard to believe that anyone could be that naive. His claim that this doesn't reward terror is utter rubbish. Hamas, a prescribed terrorist organisation, every bit as brutal as ISIS, has declared Keir Starmer's recognition of the Palestinian state as a victory. That's their words. Yeah. And this started with their attacks on October the 7th, 2023, when they broke the ceasefire. And it shows that if you're violent enough, brutal enough, weak leaders will give you what you want. And when a terrorist death cult thanks you, well, it's time to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And the British Israeli hostage, I'll just add this, that Emily Damari was right to accuse Keir Starmer of moral failure.
And what's interesting as well, just to compound the confusion further, Daniel, is that, you know, I'm not an expert on the geopolitical criteria for becoming a country, but the basics, which I think I probably learnt at school, but the basics quite clearly preclude Palestine from that. I mean, they're ticking no boxes here in that respect.
Yeah, so the Keir Starmer is a lawyer, he's King's Counsel, he professes to believe in the rule of law. But what this has done is rode horse and cart through the rule of law. Yeah. The criteria for statehood set out in the so-called Montevideo criteria, include the ability to govern a permanent population, the ability to enter into relations with foreign states. I'm not sure if he's suggesting that Hamas can do that, and significantly defined borders. And this is really important because Keir Starmer has said he sees the borders of this imaginary state of Palestine as 1967 borders. But as a matter of international law, those borders have never existed. It's based on what's called the Green Line. The Green Line was simply a map with a line drawn on it in green, which is where the fighting stopped in 1948. And it's from those lines that Israel was then attacked in an attempt to wipe it out off the map in 1967. And as it stands, there are major, long-established Israeli settlements beyond that line, including Ariel, Malau Adumim, Gush Etzion. Gush Etzion predated 1948. There are 500,000 Jews living in those towns. Is he proposing they go to live under Palestinian rule after seeing what's just happened in Gaza? I doubt it. Or, in Keir Starmer's world, is he suggesting those Jews be forcibly removed? Is he suggesting those areas are ethnically cleansed of Jews? He may not have got the memo, Ian, but Europeans don't get to tell Jews where we live anymore. Yeah. And I can't see the IDF agreeing to forcibly remove Jews because Keir Starmer thinks that Jews shouldn't live beyond that line, if that's what he's getting at. So the approach, and that's of France, they seem to be rather like sort of Victorian imperialism, trying to dictate where borders should be, but without any teeth anymore. And it does feel very performative. But where it creates a major risk is this. Israel is a major ally of Britain. It's, you know, our eyes and ears in the Middle East. It's one very friendly country. It has been a very friendly country in the Middle East, and that is being placed at serious, serious risk. And there were a number of very senior defence officials, Sir Grant Shapps, Air Marshal Philip Lester, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, Colonel Philip Ingram, as well as Colonel Richard Kemp and Major Andrew Fox, both of whom have spent a significant amount of time in Israel and in Gaza since October the 7th to really understand these issues. And they've all penned a letter to the Times expressing concern about the risk to security cooperation with Israel and that this rewards terror. They've cited, for example, how Israeli surveillance drones and medical equipment have kept British troops safe. All of this is now being placed at risk for this performative appeasement, which won't actually appease anybody because those that are chanting in the street are not chanting for a two-state solution. They're chanting for Israel to be wiped out, to be made Judenfrei from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
It was, I think you'll also appreciate that on the back of that, Keir Starmer then choosing to deliver a message to the Jewish community where he purported to care about the hostages has been seen, certainly by me and every single Jewish person I've spoken to in my community, as a slap in the face.
You can't, yeah, you really can't make the timing up of that announcement. Well, listen, Daniel, I hope you enjoy Rosh Hashanah, enjoy and have a relaxed and great time with your family. And despite the pressures that are around you and talking to people like me, I hope you find time to take some peace in Jewish New Year. Thank you to him. That's Daniel Burke, Director of UK Lawyers for Israel. Georgina is down in London. Back to our big issue that we began with. Oh, in fact, I should just mention, by the way, Georgina, Donald Trump is speaking at the moment at the United Nations. He's claiming, I ended 7 wars. That's going to be analysed. And right now, he said, the United States is the hottest country on the globe. He's great at selling it. He's got that Boris Johnson thing. Sorry to mention Boris Johnson, Georgina, before you come on. Let's talk Keir Starmer.
Well, I think that the recognition of the Palestine state, Ian, has got to be one of the most stupid and heartless decisions that this government has ever made. Terrorism is something that should never be rewarded, and you should never negotiate with terrorists. The majority of the UK do not share Starmer's ridiculous decision. Rewarding terrorists for their heinous actions sends out a message that terrorism continued gets rewarded, and you get what you want eventually. And now Hamas is claiming a major victory, thanks to Keir Starmer. We're now under threat that the floodgates being opened to Palestinian terrorists being allowed into the UK. And these people won't be coming here to assimilate, Ian. They will be coming to overthrow. This is a direct threat to every man, woman and child in the UK. This globalist government is most definitely not looking out for our best interests. They're working in conjunction with their own globalist ideology that really just will not work. And not only that, they have alienated us from two of our biggest allies, one being the USA and the other being Israel. You know, it's absolutely disgraceful. This is quite obviously the government that has difficulty differentiating between right and wrong, and this is most definitely wrong with this decision. Only this morning, I was looking through X, and I saw a video of a little boy. When I say little, he's the same age as my son. He's about 17, and he also has learning difficulties. And they would beat this child, was actually handcuffed to a wall.
I saw
while
this.
Palestinians were beating him with pieces of tube. Now, I am a very, very hard old bird, let me tell you. But that, Ian, brought me to my knees. As a species, the human race is regressing, and there is no moral compass anymore. This has got to be remedied, and it has to be stopped. And I don't care how they stop it now. They have got to stop this fighting, because this now has become unbearable. And we, as a British nation, are embarrassed and humiliated by the decision of this British government, because they are not working for and on behalf of the people of Britain. I totally disown this government, totally, categorically disown them. And Keir Starmer should be totally ashamed. How dare he say to the Jewish community about having a good Rosh Hashanah, a good New Year, after what he's done. This, to me, is despicable. And that, Ian, is all I have to say on this matter.
Georgina, you said it with utmost passion. Thank you very much. Georgina down in London. 0344 499 1000. We'll go back to more of your calls in a few moments. Just a reminder, Donald Trump speaking at the United Nations at the moment. He said, and only Trump would say this, the United Nations not coming close to living up to potential, he's saying. I think he's going to probably give them an absolute royal pasting. You see, this is where Trump is at his best. Not talking about paracetamol, but talking about things like this. You know, trying to crack down the opulence of global institutions that have dined out on the fact that they are nothing more than global institutions. Now, that might make sense. On paper, a World Health Authority, that kind of organisation, kind of makes sense. You know, you want to share data and, you know, come up with commonality when it comes to solving the great plague that might be around the corner in 2036. I get that. I understand it. But these things have an ambitious habit of growing. The United Nations is perhaps the best example of it. And they grow, they have all sorts of powers, and they have literally no one to answer to. They are extraordinarily autonomous while simultaneously wielding extraordinary influence around planet Earth. And they get a lot of money as well. I mean, we're talking billions across all of these institutions. So there's Trump telling it like it is. That's when he's at his best. Just slamming the status quo and saying this doesn't always work the way you think it's going to work, and you're a bit rubbish, frankly, because you ain't done anything. Great work from the American president. Nearly called him the royal president then, although some do see him in that kind of regal way. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 3. Oh, the voice of doom, by the way. I forgot well, we've got so many things happening. You've got Trump talking to the United Nations. You've got Ed Davey talking to the Liberal Democrat conference. I have no idea why that always just somehow generates a bit of a smile on my face. I'm sure he's a lovely man. He's currently warning of Farage's Britain. You can only imagine the catalogue of old cobblers that he's wheeling out to the grateful Lib Dem masses over there at the conference. So that's what he's saying. He's doing the stand-up thing. I hate it when politicians do that. You know, they do the walking around on stage without a podium. And you've got Donald Trump simultaneously, who's at the United Nations standing at the mother of all podiums. It's like something from a flipping Harry Potter / Star Trek movie. And he's standing there wheeling out what is going wrong. Recognising Palestine is a reward for atrocities, he says. We have to stop the war in Gaza. America is the hottest country on planet Earth right now. The United Nations are not living up to their potential. He's got it all going on. And it looks so much better when a politician stands at a podium, doesn't it? That's where they're meant to be. Don't do the walking around. At least Davey hasn't got his sleeves rolled up, which Cameron used to love doing. So, the voice of doom. This was the mystery voice we played you before the news at 3.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Who's that? These are some of the guesses. David Steele, no. It is a bit steely. Ian Duncan Smith, it is not. Eric Trump, no. Norman Tebbit, Merlin Rees, Michael Heseltine, all wrong. We haven't got a right answer. I should say, by the way, our WhatsApp seems to be down at the moment, so they were messages that came through on text. You can still text us. There's a national rate charge for that. I think that's right. You have to put the word talk in before you text on 87222. Or you can WhatsApp us, voice note us, or call us on 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to your calls. Charlie in East Sussex. What have you got, Charlie? Afternoon to you.
Well, good afternoon, Ian.
Hello.
Norm, I love your show, mate, seriously.
Thank you.
When I phone in, I phone in a fair bit, and I'm usually quite upbeat, like a little bit of a quip, but honestly, today, I'm quite emotional about this, mate, because what has happened today, I feel so embarrassed and ashamed of my country. And honestly, it's absolutely disgusting what's gone on. And I honestly can't believe it. I don't think I can talk anymore because it's just so bad. Seriously, I can't believe it that we've recognised this state that is murderous, barbarous, and I just don't want people out there to think that they're doing it in my name, and I don't want people to think that we all like it and we all support this, because I believe that the majority of people in the UK certainly do not, and that's all I'm going to say on it.
Charlie, powerful stuff. Thank you very much. Charlie is the second caller after Georgina, who's got quite emotional about this very point. The more you think about it, and I speak for Charlie clearly, but many others, this sort of beggars belief. See October 7th for details. But it isn't just that. There's so much more you would be able to see. And I don't advise anybody to... Georgina referenced a video of a child getting abused, essentially. Clearly somebody with difficulties. I can't corroborate the context of that video, where or when it was filmed or what reason, not that there could be any reason for a young boy, sort of mid-teens, being beaten while chained to a wall. I don't know what it was from. But it was deeply unpleasant. However, you will find many corroborated stories of the kind of ethos. This is an organisation, Hamas, that still think it's 1563 or something. It's a backward death cult. That's what they do. It's how they roll. It's how they want the world to be. Anyone that's not adhering to that hymn sheet is scum, and that would include mostly, top of the list, the State of Israel. They don't want any part of that two-state solution. No. These people should be dead. That's how they think. I don't know why or how they still think like this, or where this sort of almost evangelical approach to a religion comes from. It's awful, and we are recognising it and saying, going forward, we're going to, we recognise you. But what about the other stuff, Keir? What about all the other stuff? And there's quite a lot to get through. Don't go away, Mary. With you shortly. 0344 499 1000. Somebody here says, please stop having Alex Phillips on, pretending to be someone else. Georgina, just on the phone now. I'm assuming this is a joke. She does these recorded calls for her own show, and now others. It's so obviously her voice. I'm going to contact the media. No, you are contacting the media. He's having a giraffe, isn't he? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. Let's move to this story. Terminal extensions, new gates and upgraded taxiways are just a few things that will come about as a result of the Gatwick expansion. Hurrah! It's expected to create 14,000 jobs, rake in £1 billion annually. The only problem is it is facing legal challenges that, if prioritised by courts, could take months to resolve. Matt, you can only see this coming around the corner, whether they're coming at this from an environmental one, a locality. Oh, the list will be endless. James Woodhuizen is a journalist and social commentator. James, good to have you on with us. I mean, you could have written this, couldn't you, in some respects? I mean, the minute you mention you're going to build somebody, the bat people come out the woodwork and tell you can't do it. And then you get a load of other people who say it's going to wreck jobs, and other people will say it's too noisy. This is going to be a mess.
Yes, I think the jobs total, just while we're on it, is 14,000, which is not to be sneered at, but it's not going to save the British economy.
No.
You know, we've got to be clear about that. I think the overriding thing, Ian, if I may, is that this whole saga really kicked off as early as October 2009, when an investment fund called Global Infrastructure Partnerships bought Gatwick from BAA of fond or maybe not so fond memory. And from at that point onwards, almost immediately, the new chairman said he didn't want a second runway. So it's taken from 2010, in fact, to 2025 to do a 180-degree turn for the company involved to put forward an application, and for Heidi Alexander to say yes over 107 pages of provisions, strictures, and what you can and can't do. So the overriding thing that comes out of this is how long the whole process has taken, how it's always been held up by pieces of paper, how shovels have not reached the earth in 15 years, and my guess will not reach the earth for the next 5 years because of judicial reviews, because of the provisions that Alexander has demanded of Gatwick Airport Limited, and the chief of which is they got a guarantee that not 47%, but 54% of all arrivals at the airport come by public transport. Now, Ian, you know public transport. In Britain, you just magic it up, the larger passenger totals. You know, everybody flocks to those southern network lines, Brighton, London, and it's all going to be a breeze. So they'll make that provision, and then the whole runway will go ahead. And Steve Reed, the housing minister, has also said he's going to reduce the number of judicial reviews you can get from 3 down to 2 or 1. Make it much tougher to lodge objections. Believe it when you see it. That's what I say.
Indeed. And, of course, there's the other sort of slightly inconvenient truth here. It sort of does rather expose a curious contradiction in this government, because we understand that there's, you know, more environment-based taxes on their way, and the smart money says some of that will apply to air travel. We're constantly being told, you know, travel less. It's a very inefficient form of transportation when it comes to the environment and CO2s and all the rest of it. And yet the same government is simultaneously building 2 runways, one at Gatwick, one at Heathrow, and the latter being, I think, the busiest passenger airport in the world, or certainly one of 2, and Gatwick not far behind. I mean, that's a curious position. You'd have thought Ed Miliband, and any other day of the week, would have quit at this, but not one to want to give up the chauffeured limo and the red box, I'm assuming.
Well, there's a little vulgar here, and I wouldn't put all his motives down to that sumptuous lifestyle he undoubtedly leads. Sans heat pumps, you know, sans electric SUV.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not sure that I agree with you that they're not building a 3rd runway at Heathrow. They're debating it, arguably, for another 30 years.
No, agreed. Yeah, agreed. I should have maybe clarified that point.
Yeah, you know, it's been on the table. They've been back off the table. But, you know, we're dealing with, are you really telling me, and I know you're not, that Labour has suddenly converted to the slogan that it stole from The Economist, actually, we're the builders, not the blockers.
Yeah.
And it's going to overcome local NIMBY opinion, judges, judicial reviews, the blob, the civil servants, demonstrators, Just Stop Oil or any success in that. You know, Labour's going to stand firm. It's moving so far to the right and in favour of growth that it's going to face down, you know, all of these sort of petty bourgeois green opponents. It's not going to do that. You know, Zach Polanski is Flavour of the Month with the BBC, and so are Friends of the Earth and all the usual suspects, and they're going to mount a furious opposition in the courts, aided by our old friends Lay Day, the famous solicitors who's never been known to take on a case that didn't, you know, ring all the woke bells. So we're going to have a protracted legal dispute. This isn't about moving asphalt and concrete 12 meters, which is what they're going to do. They're not building a new runway. They're just going to shift the current strip. And it's taken them 15 years to move 12 meters. You know, that's the kind of tortoise pace we're looking at.
Yeah, and it kind of, as you sort of said at the beginning, listen, it's probably, you know, we're going to sit here in 5 years' time having this same flipping conversation, because I don't believe a tree will be felled or a piece of tarmac laid.
That's right. Don't let's fool ourselves that Labour's had a Damascene conversion.
Yeah.
You know, planning obstacles, judicial sclerosis is a way of life for that party. That's who they rely on, what they rely on. So, of course, Ed Miliband's reasonably relaxed about it because he knows that nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, spot on. James, always lovely to take your thoughts and views on these things. James Woodheisen, journalist and social commentator. It's you think of China, don't you? And you know how quick those characters can build a road or a runway or flipping anything that they say they're going to do. Oh, we're going to do it. When's it going to be ready? Oh, week on Friday. And we're sitting here dilly-dallying, navel glazing, doing more research and going, well, it's a runway, you know, in an expanding world. And that shouldn't really affect anyone other than the fact that it will create more jobs and should, in theory, create better fares and more competition and the ease of congestion that we see at airports. You know, this is the journey of mankind. Flying through the air should not be remarkable, and being able to take off and land in a way that is, you know, very straightforward, sort of ABC fashion, should kind of be the norm. But you kind of, I swear, in years to come, people will look back at us this era and go, how the hell did it take that long to build an airport? It's like a straight road. Got to be a bit thicker than the A21, I understand that. And there are other considerations around it. We understand that as well. But come on, man, it's a straight road. Build the flipping thing. There's the place. The place already exists. There's where it needs to be. Boys, get your shovels. Build a straight road. Plenty of tarmac. Away we go. Happy days, you might think. Am I simplifying it? Well, a bit, but do you know what? Not by much, frankly. Andrew's in Cambridgeshire. Back to Donald Trump and paracetamol. What have you got for us, Andrew? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi. I was just thinking, when Trump made those comments, and we all know that Trump's a bit like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
But what he's saying, it reminds me of the days of thalidomide. Back in the day, that would have been regarded as a perfectly safe drug. It's for pregnant women with, morning sickness, and anybody who attempted to shed light on any of the possible health detrimental effects of that drug would have been shot down in flames. Their credibility gone down the toilet. And how dare you question what the medical profession says is safe? Well, now, of course, we know the truth, don't we? So
true, but we are. I mean, it's a very persuasive kind of argument. I guess the counter to that, Andrew, would be there were certainly dissenting voices at the time. The more you read about it, with thalidomide, and also it was, you know, way too late because the damage had been done. But, you know, it didn't, in relative terms, it didn't last that long on the shelves. And, of course, paracetamol's been around for, you know, just shy of 100 years. So, or 80 years, I think it is. So.
But if paracetamol is really that safe, why am I only allowed to buy 2 boxes of it?
It's quite funny that in Tesco, isn't it? It happened the other day. I bought ibuprofen, and in fact, even just one box flashed up an age check. Is that the same with paracetamol as well?
Yeah, it's the same with paracetamol. You only have 2 boxes at a time.
Yeah, but I guess if you were to, if you were hell-bent on doing some damage and somebody wanted to pop 17 boxes, they stop you from doing it, don't they? Not that you couldn't just walk into 17 other venues, but I take it.
I've got a large family, so don't worry. I've already figured that bit out.
You know how to get stocked up. Yeah, it's a good point. It's quite during COVID, of course, that's when people realised that it was tricky, wasn't it? Because people were stocking up just in case they got the wicked Uber flu. As it turned out, they didn't change the rules for that. Good point, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. 3:45. Let's go to Bob in Ludlow. What have you got, Bob? Afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Fire away.
Good. I'm not surprised, and I don't know why anybody else is surprised about Starmer's stance on Palestine and recognising a bunch of terrorists, because in reality, this is Starmer's version of Tony Blair and what he did in the 90s and noughties with, I'm a veteran myself and served in Northern Ireland, and what he did was basically appease the terrorists and throw the servicemen under the bus. The same servicemen that the British governments, various British governments, including Labour, sent to serve in Northern Ireland. And basically what he's done here, even though Palestine, not Palestine, Palestine never existed, Gaza and Israel have a problem. It's not our direct problem as such.
Yep.
But basically what he's doing is giving succour to terrorists. And the man is a terrorist to this country, basically.
It's kind of interesting.
Out of office.
I'd love him to be sat here, Bob, just to kind of explain. Because, every now and again somebody does something a bit weird or says something bizarre. And you think, well, maybe there's something I've missed. Maybe there's another reason for doing this. Maybe there's a kind of a longer-term sort of purpose behind, what he said. I can't find one, by the way. I've tried to look. I can't find one. But if he was sitting here now, he wouldn't say, oh, I love Hamas, I hate Israel. He might not say that, but do you know what I mean? He would have in his own mind a reason for what he did, the same as Australia and France and the other countries. I just can't find it.
Well, it's not there. I mean, in reality, he thinks as a human rights lawyer. He doesn't think as a politician, especially a prime minister who is governing the whole of the UK. This is the difference. As the statesmen that we used to have up until about 30, 40 years ago, about 30, 35 years ago, we used to have real statesmen and women, including Margaret Thatcher. And they could see the big picture with regard to the whole country, not just to their little empire in London or whatever.
And they weren't afraid of, taking decisions that could be unpopular, but in the long term they would prove to be correct. And they obviously didn't get everything right. But that was our first guest, I don't know if you heard him, Bob, a Professor Minford, an economist, Thatcher's favourite economist, as it turned out, made that point, that you've got to think long term, not just do things that are little sweeteners for your voter base, which I think the Palestine thing is.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I have about Starmer is when I was serving this country abroad during the Cold War, that man was in a Soviet work camp as a volunteer.
Yeah, good point.
In the Czech Republic, which was Czechoslovakia at the time.
Yep.
Now, he volunteered to go and work for the Soviet regime that had basically built a wall across Berlin to divide the East and the West. Mm-hmm. And we used to have to travel a 100-click corridor between West Germany and Western Berlin through Soviet territory to get to Western Berlin. Now, while all this was going on, he had volunteered to go and work for the enemy. Now this man is our Prime Minister.
That's kind of all you need to know. Bob, I'm going to on that point, let's leave that profound statement hanging. Thank you to Bob in Ludlow. Another great call. We've always got great calls here. Fabulous this afternoon in particular. 0344 499 1000. As we speak, Ed Davey has finished speaking, but as you might imagine, Donald Trump hasn't. Mr. Trump is addressing the United Nations. He's questioning the threat of global warming. He's talked about America being the hottest country. He's talked about the UN not stepping up to the plate. He's talking about how incorrect it is to recognise Palestine, reference our last few callers. And he's made some comments, even at the United Nations, and boy, this will actually boost his ego. He's made some comments about Sadiq Khan. Really? Find out more after this.
I mentioned the Singaporean model, right? They review it every 5 years. You've got to actually be able to bring benefits. You've got to be able to prove that you can integrate. I think actually you walk around your home, Julia, in London, and I imagine that you'll find many people not too far away from where you are that simply do not integrate within British life.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, we cannot have the social cohesion that we have been so used to for so very long if we actually allow this to continue.
You go to hardware stores, you buy new furniture. It's a it's a boon to the economy.
It's a fantastic multiplier, and that will, again, by hitting the housing market, encouraging that to grow, that gives you a bit more confidence. So those people say, actually, I will now start to invest in a new business or set up, and you change the entire attitude of the economy from one which is we're doomed, and trying to actually explain to people, yes, you just said in terms of our growth figures, who wants to be the fastest snail? I mean, it's utterly irrelevant that we're slightly faster than anybody else. The figures are probably wrong anyway.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just gone 10 to 4. President Trump has said climate change is the greatest con job. Now, this is really interesting. Hugely interesting, if you're bearing in mind there's a lot of people, as you know, because we debate this stuff all the time, that are not quite sold on the doomsday scenario given out by some elements of those advocating net zero and associated policies. It's not that unusual for some people, us, to question. And boy, if someone wants to change the entire direction of travel and it's going to cost you more money, we should be questioning. We should always be questioning. But very rare. I mean, Donald Trump's go, well, I'm not sure about the windmills. They're, waste of money, etc. He's gone that far. But here he is telling the United Nations, it couldn't be any more unequivocal, the President of the United States, climate change is the greatest con job. In some respects, that would end the entire initiatives around climate change and global warming and net zero. The problem he's got, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, because this is just happening now live, is that China, and bearing in mind, this is really the US versus China in terms, you know, who's got the biggest whatsits and, you know, the greatest economic powerhouse. China aren't taking that view. While he is drill, baby, drill, China is build, baby, build. They've got more windmills and solar panels going on over there. Yeah, they're using up the stuff they've got for their big chimneys. Yeah, we know they're polluting like mummers over there in China. But simultaneously, China are absolutely taking this stuff seriously, if for no other reason than their own economic advantage. So that's kind of interesting. I think we might talk about this tomorrow, actually. Climate change, the greatest con job. The most powerful man in the world has just made that statement. Where does this leave the green debate? That's our question for tomorrow, Finn. Where does this leave net zero? We're sorted. We might as well stay on for another 3 hours and do tomorrow's show now. I'm feeling a bit iffy. That man flu's kicking in again. So can we just record this and we'll use it tomorrow at 1 o'clock? He's also said, speaking at the UN General Assembly, by the way, he's used some of that time at the podium to reignite his feud with Sadiq Khan. Now, you may remember last week, on the way home from his state visit on Air Force One, he criticised Khan. He says he's among the worst mayors in the world. A worst mayor, there's no worst mayor, he's a very worst mayor, and claimed he made sure he was not invited to the banquet at Windsor. Sources close to Khan told us he didn't seek or expect an invite. Fast forward today, and Trump has brought Khan up again at the United Nations. We will, maybe Jezza on Drive will be able to bring you that audio when we get it. I think it's on its way, actually. All I would say to Donald Trump is that every time you mention Sadiq Khan, Mr. Khan loves every bit of it. He loves every bit of it. This is not kind of, sadly, it's funny, but Khan already hates Trump and Trump hates Khan. The fact that the American president would even know who he was is something. The fact that he would reference him on Air Force One is something else. The fact that he would further reference him at the United Nations is another territory. Here's what he said.
I have to say, I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained.
Wow. I don't know about the Sharia law thing. I mean, I know what he's referencing. Listen, don't let some facts stand in the way of a good presidential speech. I thought a lot of what Donald Trump has said this afternoon is very powerful stuff, but I don't think I've ever heard a Western leader come out so unequivocally and say that whole climate thing is a con job, mate. It's a con job. Now, that could be... I mean, that's surely game changer. You might well reasonably argue, Jezza, that is game up on net
Can I just
zero.
say that we do this job every day, and, you know, you search for things to talk about,
Yes.
and then Donald Trump stands up and basically says...
He writes your show for you.
The UN was forced to stop invasions, not fund them. I don't like that dreadful Mayor Sadiq Khan. He just wants to introduce Sharia law. Climate change is the biggest con job in the history of the world, and recognising Palestine is a reward for Hamas. It's been lovely you being here. Thank you very much indeed. And
Good
they're all
night.
sat there going, what the... But the United Nations, here's a question for you. Is it worth what it is anymore? Has it done anything?
Nobody
Donald
really
Trump
knows
said,
what the heck
I
it is.
stopped 7 wars and you did bugger all.
Yeah, he said you're not living to any potential here.
The Epping hotel asylum seeker jailed and was quoted as saying, I didn't realise you had such restrictions on behaviour. I think I wish to be deported. OK.
Yeah, really?
So a restriction, sexually assaulting a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Get out of my country. What is wrong with you people?
The interesting thing is, he